Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Carl, for those that don't know, and we are back with another episode of Vacuum Exposition. Now, before I get into it, of course, for those that haven't been watching this month, we are doing a series on Hoover Convertibles, the quintessential vacuum cleaner produced from Hoover from the 1950s all the way up into the 90s. Uh, Really, when you look up vacuum cleaner, this is the generic shape that people usually think of as a vacuum. Now, today being no different, we will be taking a look at another really special convertible. And we have been looking at a few. We did a couple of them earlier this month, including a U4123, as well as a U4119. While one was a recent find, the 4119 was a little bit more special, and today's vacuum kind of follows in suit with that one. So without further ado, let's get on to our video for today and take a look at another really cool Hoover convertible. All right, everybody. So we have here a very interesting convertible to look at. Now, the Hoover convertible had many different looks, as I'm sure you've kind of been able to denote based on my other videos on them that I've produced. Um, some of them have had a metal base with a rounded hood and big medallion logo. Some of them have had kind of a square little hood, maybe a metal or a plastic base, maybe a headlight here and there. But this one is quite different, and this is the reason why I kind of wanted to go over this one today. Now, what we're looking at today is a 1979 Hoover convertible model U4307. Now, I know you're probably asking, just like last week and the week before, what do those numbers mean? Well, that's just the way that Hoover numbered them, so I really couldn't tell you that. However, this particular machine did note kind of an important time period in history. 1979 was a big year for Hoover. They were replacing a lot of their older lineup, some of the more staple type Hoover convertibles, some of the square hoods, some of the ones with the headlights, kind of like the ones that we've taken a look at in the past, were getting replaced with what we call the full hoods, or in some ways, they were getting replaced with, well, just the newer designed hoods. Now, when I say hoods, I mean this big plastic green area right here. This is what we call the full hood. Now, underneath this is actually a plastic base that would look just like the 4119's base, kind of plastic and overall square, kind of like the shape of this is already. And then you would have this huge helmet-like hood that went over the top of it. What's cool about this one is this was a Kmart exclusive. So Kmart, for those that know or don't know, was a subsidiary of Sears, and thus introduced us to things like the Blue Light Special and Layaway and other such things. But they did have a contract with Hoover for a good long time, and sold Hoover products under the Hoover name. But they usually had a different color scheme, different bags, different just overall features. Now, with this one, after consulting with another Hoover expert on this particular machine, I found that this one was actually Kmart, as well as Hoover's first full hood with a rounded metal handle. A lot of these full hoods ended up getting what we called a square handle with that square plug I've mentioned a couple of times. So this was actually kind of the end of an era with a lot of it, because this is 1979. This is the very end of the 70s. We're still seeing this style of machine being sold, as well as its sister, the U4303, which in terms of design looked similar but different in a lot of ways. And I'll actually show the ad for that right here. Now, I know you can't tell the colors because it is in black and white. Well, a lot of these, of course, were newspaper ads, so you didn't really see the colors until you went into the store sometimes. Now, with this particular one, this, of course, came in the green motif, that had this bag that was kind of a white pattern that went into these green stripes into kind of a dark green stripe, what I like to call the three-tone stripe bag. So, but the machine that was right next to it, the U4303, that particular machine actually was the sister to this, the little sister, I might add, because this one was the top of the line. This one had the 4-position height adjustment. It had the big wide headlight, the full hood. as well as a top fill bag, as well as a handle grip right up here. So this was a very high-end machine for them. This was their top of the line, and they were very proud of it. The 4303, now it still had a pretty big headlight on the front, but it overall was the little sister just because it was, well, the lower end. It did have a little bit less features, still had a 4-position height adjustment, but overall, you did get a little bit less with it than you would the top of the line, just being as that it is. So this machine was very special because once 1980 rolled around, you saw things like Hoover's Decade 80, which was technically an offshoot of the convertible line, utilizing a lot of the same parts, pieces, motors, and a lot of that stuff, but it was different. Different hood, different base, overall a different machine, which you also would have seen, motor changes and things like that. Now, this particular machine in general, I absolutely love the look of. It's got such cool coloring, the greens. It matched with a celebrity canister you probably saw in the ad, which I do have that one as well, and we'll probably take a look at that one eventually. But it is just really cool to be able to find these important pieces of history, especially when you find things that are specific to a certain brand like Kmart. Kmart, of course, is no longer around, as well as pretty much all of Sears, unfortunately. So this particular piece of Kmart history is getting lost to the annals of our American history just because, well, people had these machines, and once they broke, they unfortunately got rid of them. But that is why I wanted to bring this one to you today, because it is not only a pretty machine, but it's a very deluxe machine, and it's one that they're proud of to put on their sales floor back in the day. Now, bringing this back around, I mentioned earlier that it was kind of special in the way of that U4119. For those that didn't see that video, definitely go back and watch it. It was a really fun one to make, as well as a very important one to fire up after many years of sitting in storage. But this particular one was another one of my good friend Jay's. But this one was one of his most favorite convertibles in his collection. Now, the U4307, while it was a very important machine for Kmart, this was a very important machine for Jay, because this is what he always called the Aunt Mary's convertible. And this particular machine was not only one that a family member of his had, but it was also one that really shaped his interest in vacuum cleaners. I know I said a lot on the 4119 video about how that one was really one that captured his interest, but he also was exposed to several older machines, or machines that were just of the time, that his family members had, and this was one of them. His aunt had this one. When he would go to her place, he would play with it. And I actually have a picture of him using his Aunt Mary's convertible in her house that I'll show right here, actually. As you can see, it's being used. Him as a kid building his interest, using a vacuum cleaner that for everybody else would really not make a huge difference, but for him, it was special. And for that reason, that particular machine was very, very important to him. Now, there was a funny story that he always used to tell about that particular version. Now, this particular machine is not his Aunt Mary's convertible. And there's a very important reason for that. Now, he used to tell this story all the time about when he once took his Aunt Mary's convertible and took it all apart. As do many of us collectors, we like to service our machines. Well, he wanted to know how it worked, so he took it all apart, and unfortunately, as a child, couldn't put it back together. So, of course, he went running to his aunt, as well as his mother, of course, crying because he couldn't put it back together. And unfortunately, because of that reason, and because nobody else knew how to put it back together, his aunt ended up throwing it away. Which, all in all, is sad because these are quite uncommon vacuum cleaners now. But he managed to find another one years later when he was much older and as a collector, and happily put it next to his mother's original U4119, and kept them as kind of a pair. So He cared very deeply about this machine. This was never anything he would ever let go of, especially because of the story that went with it. So it is really nice to be able to kind of put it up in a video for you guys and kind of go over it and show the magic that this particular machine is. Now, of course, for me, this is going to stay Aunt Mary's convertible, of course, because that's what he always meant it to be. So that's what it's going to stay. And if I ever find the U4303, the sister to this machine in orange, I would love to put it with this one, but for now, it will be happily placed back in storage with his mother's convertible, waiting for when I have a museum and can display it together. Now, we are about to get into our run demo, and I will say this machine also, much like his mother's convertible, has not been ran since he was around, which we're in 2025 now. He passed away in 21. So we're looking at 4 years of being in storage alone. And I know that he did not use this machine often. So it's probably maybe even 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years since this thing's even turned on. So we got a good belt on it. So let's get on to our run demo and see how Aunt Mary's convertible performs.
Well, everybody, we've got the U4307 all plugged in and ready to go. And I am very excited. Like I said, this hasn't been fired up in what could have been about 10 years. So I think it's ready to rock. So let's see how it does on the floor. And just like that, this thing did a phenomenal job on the floor. And of course, with that height adjustment feature, this machine's able to do so many different floors. Of course, this did fabulous, and much to the Hoover motto, it did beat as it swept, as it cleaned. So I hope you all enjoyed our little run demo for today, because this machine absolutely performs phenomenal.
Well, everybody, we've reached the end of our video for today. Now, this gorgeous 1979 Hoover convertible model U4307 absolutely did great on the floor. And why wouldn't it? Again, these machines were the quintessential vacuum. Everybody had them. They were an affordable price for a lot of value. And you got so many options with them. You could have anything you wanted on them practically. Almost made to order. Not really, because you did still have model numbers and things like that, but you know what I mean. You could get whatever you wanted in a vacuum with Hoover. Now, this machine being a very special one to its former owner, it does definitely mean a little bit more when this thing lights up and gets going. I know his family did trust me to take care of his collection, and I know that he would very much appreciate this machine being brought to you guys today. I know this was one that I always loved to ask him about and check on because, it was one that he was proud of, but, it really just kind of sat in his collection, being that it had such a great memory behind it. But I know that it will always be taken care of and cherished in my collection. And of course, on behalf of him, it's not going anywhere. So, but anyways, well, folks, thank you all again for joining us today. And of course, I'm sure Jay is very happy with us bringing you a video on his Aunt Mary's old convertible, even if it isn't the actual Aunt Mary's convertible. But it was certainly fun to get this one out for you guys and run it across the floor. Um, so we will, of course, be back next week with another episode of Vacuum Exposition and on another convertible. And we will catch you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.